Hi everyone, welcome to my Shoreline studio. I'm Sybil Muschik, behind the camera is Joshua Blanc. Now today we're going to be focusing on mergansers for our artwork. And I have a good photograph I took quite a number of years ago. Just recently, because it's fall, we have lots of birds coming through to the lake on their migration route, and we had a whole flock of mergansers. So great birds, very sort of prehistoric, and I don't know if they're on the endangered list, but there are some problems. So on our lake particularly, we have, it's a very small lake, and when boats come along and make big washes, then the nests are at risk because their nests are just barely above the top of the water. They just nest in a bunch of reeds and things. And any wash, of course, will put the nests at risk, and the birds to come are lost, so which is kind of sad. Anyway, thought we'd focus on mergansers today, and they're kind of a strange bird. They're very elongated. Their legs are way at the back of their bodies, and with our small lake, they take almost half the lake just to get off into the air. So they're paddling like mad, and they look like an airplane trying to take off. Anyway, so we've done the drawing, and we're going to be doing some more, at least trying to do some more kitchen litho printing. And I've had some success, a lot of failures. But anyway, we have a cutting plan to make sure that if something doesn't work, that we can carry on to the next phase. But we'll see what happens today. Now, some of the problems with kitchen lithography, one of them is foil, aluminum foil. So the modern foils often have coatings on them to make them more, I guess, resistant. So, resistant to sticking and food-safe things, because aluminum will react with some foods, like, anything with acid in them, like tomato sauce and stuff. So some of our aluminum foils now have these coatings. Well, that doesn't help us printmakers who are trying to do kitchen litho, which I've now gone through about 4 or 5 aluminum foils, and China has come through for me again. And this is the Betty Crocker label. It's actually a pretty good foil. It's strong, and as far as I know, there's no resistant surface on any of it, and so far so good. So we'll be using that, and we may do some abrasion on the surface. Generally you work on the not smooth side, not the shiny side, and it helps if you use a very fine sandpaper. It's called gator grit. Whatever, 600B, I think up to 1,000 is really good. So we could have it a little less rough than that, but that's okay. This one will work. So we'll do some of that. And we'll probably start with a bunch of little scribblies just to see if all our processes work. One of the major problems, I think, is your ink. So roll out your ink ahead of time, and it has to be an oil-based ink. So I'm using Speedball, and I've combined some black and red. I also have some Daniel Smith. This is an etching ink. And etching is a little bit more fluid than your litho ink, which takes quite a long time to prepare. And that's if you're using the proper litho method with stones and all the sulfuric acid and so forth to etch the stone, which is a huge process, and And I wonder about the guarantees at the end too. You know, there's such a thing to go through. Anyway, so make sure that your ink is in good shape. And it's got to be reasonably warmed. So the way to warm the ink, of course, is just to work it and work it. With speedball, that isn't such a huge process. Now with working with oil, it's a bit messy, so try and control some of the mess here. And I'll talk about some of the problems we've had as we go along. Because the first thing we're going to do, and I've done the drawing already, but we're going to have to redraw it on the litho plate. And we're going to start off with a nice background, but just with acrylic paint. Yeah, we're just going to roll it out. I want a fairly light surface. We're going to be doing sort of a watery background. And by doing the scribblies, it'll sort of look like, you know, water shapes. And then if everything's working, we'll try for the merganser. But if it doesn't work, we're just going to do it as a transfer, as a graphite transfer. So like I said, we've got all the bases covered, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm just doing sort of a graded tone here. Now I've sent for another brayer, and generally I work with this one. They're both speedball, but this one is really the best quality. And these are okay, but some people who are, you know, putting out messages on Amazon are saying that the centers are a little warped, concave, and that you know, these things spring out, so not good. And I'm just going to use just the cardstock. With the litho process, you don't really have to wet your paper if you don't want. If you're putting it through an etching press, then it's probably a good idea. And then use a good quality printmaking paper. There's all sorts of them, like Raves BFK. So this gives us our start. Okay, interesting. Almost a cloudy effect here. Anyway, which is good. So nice and watery. We'll clean up this plate because we're going to need it. Now my way of printing lithos is to transfer them to the gel plate, because then you can manipulate it further, do all sorts of other wild and crazy things. So this was one of my scribbly things, and it was quite successful. I transferred it to the gel plate and printed it. And I can, since I didn't have too many grungy things, I could probably print it again if I wanted to, but we're going to start from scratch. Now make sure I'm wearing gloves because we have oil on our fingers. And we have a plate. And then tricky thing is just mist it lightly. Just so it sticks a little bit. Okay. And here's our foil. And then be careful when you're unrolling it. I'm just going to make sure whoops, almost forgot. This side here. There. The less you touch, the better. Even if it's not an oily surface. That is one criteria. I guess we'll just cut it with this. I had a knife here somewhere, but that's okay. Find your edges. It's much easier without gloves. All right. Just fold under. I'm just going to use a clean piece of cloth here to make sure it's down clean and dry. And you can tape it. Okay, I'm not doing any marks on this side anyway, so we won't be inking that. Okay, so now we talked about abrading this. So circles and then side to side. We're only going to do a small part of this plate for our little experiments. That gives you sort of a tone for the background. And if there is a wee bit of a coating of some kind, it might help deter that. All right, now we're going to look at different media here, try a bunch of silly marks and things, and we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Okay, now starting with sort of scribbly water shapes and different media. This one's one of my favorites. It's just a fine point Gmail, whatever that means. Okay, good pen. Happily endorse them, but we don't have any endorsements at the moment. Okay, so some of that. This is a distress crayon. So we'll make some other shapes. And we'll just see, what is best looking. A Sharpie, which we will, because it's got nicer lines, we can do smaller shapes. And this is charcoal pencil. Charcoal should work. And we'll just do some lines. Okay, and then I think this is sort of just like a pencil crayon. And I don't know if that will show up, but we'll try. So just a lot of line work. Okay, let's try a regular pen. In Britain they call these boiros. But it's just basically a ballpoint pen. But the lines, you know, there's some nice lines. We'll see. Very busy water. All right, so what are we missing here? Our grease pencil, or China marker. Okay, well, with the China marker, let's just add a bit of tone to some of them, make some of them darker. Let's see if that works. Maybe some in here. Yeah, some of them just cry out for tone, don't they? This one too, I think. Maybe they're cloud reflections. Graphite stick went for a walkabout, but we can do pencil. This is HB. And again, let's just maybe try for a bit of tone. So that should be a lighter tone. I don't know how sensitive this whole process is. With stone lithography, of course, it's very sensitive and you can get the most exquisite lines, which is probably why they continue to do this appalling process. And like a lot of printmaking, it's unique. Painting is pretty well how you place it, with your brushes and your paints and so forth, but in printmaking, there's a certain look that you can't get any other way, which is why we persevere. Okay, well, I think that's about run the course of all the media we have. Again, we're focusing on getting your ink in shape. Just run it through once more. I might just put my warming tool to this. If you have a really heavy snick, I think you can hear it. It's too thick. Lithography tends to work more on the thinner bases. So we'll keep working that. Right, in the meantime, now we go to the sink. Okay, so now we add the cola. Now this is fresh. and basically just run it down. You can hear the fizz. So one layer. Don't take too long doing this. A minute at the most. And you can save your cola. I'm just going to transfer it to my little jar here. And then we're going to do it once more. I just want to make sure it's a good edge. And that should about do it. And now we're just going to rinse it. And let it drip off. And all the cola's gone. Now you're just going to put a little tiny bit of very light oil on. This is just canola oil. And what happens then is that you take off all the different media as far as it's able to be taken off. Keep working it. Now if it's just plain graphite, you don't have to go through this process. But the other media, because you've got crayon and such, then you do. And just a tiny bit more. No, it's still coming up, so. And you should be able to see your etching process. It's sort of a little reflection. This will take a minute. If you don't get most of it off, you're not going to be able to ink the line. So I think it's about as far as it's going to go. That's the Sharpie marks, and they're pretty well permanent. Okay, so now we dribble a bit of water and just go over it again with a sponge. And the point is that the Coke, with its phosphoric and gum arabe, creates a situation where it repels oil, and which is why you can print it. So here we go then. Keep the sponge handy, wet down your plate, but just a film of moisture. And now really work your paint again. I think our temperature in here is not bad. It's 21 degrees. But roll it with some vigor so that there's heat. Okay, let's give it a shot. Let's once more. and in here. Now we're getting a little bit of grunginess. In most cases you can get rid of that. So this is why you have to make sure that your plate is wet enough. Now, I suspect that we're just too cold here, and it's not going to work for us. Okay, well, the first scribblies were kind of a disaster, so we're just doing it again. I'm just same process, inking my lines, same media, and we didn't sandpaper. And it's on the non-shiny side, so it's all good. Now, in this case, we're going to leave it to dry, and then it's going to get transposed to the gel plate. Fingers crossed, we're going to do the merganser this way and see what happens. We've increased the heat. I think that was one of the problems here. I've got a heater behind me. It looks like it's in good shape. Oh, the same procedure, just as maybe we're just a little too ambitious on the first one. And I just want to show you the first scribbly I did last night. It's very similar. This one was hand printed, and although you see the extra thickness and maybe not so much but it blurred a bit, so I'm not sure. And on the gel plate it's just so much better, so just goes to show. Anyway, we take a little interlude and we'll be right back, and we're going to print. Okay, so here we go with that plate and putting it down. Put something on the back if you like, and add a whole bunch of pressure. I think I've got another video with this process and I'm standing on it. But just in case it slips. So some of the problems so far, let's go over them. One of them is maybe doing the cola process too long. And of course, in reverse, if you don't do it long enough, that could give you problems. Having the room too cold, I think, is a major one. And so your ink doesn't brayer out well enough, and then it just makes globs and overprints everything. And that was our problem, I think, in our first attempt. And canola oil, or very, very light oil, definitely helps. I was using a cheap olive oil, and I think it's just too viscous. And same for using our mineral oil, which is much more expensive, and use it for cleanup for your gel plate more. I'm just adding pressure from the other side. And remember the trick, if you're doing it on the gel plate, printing it to the gel plate instead of printing it to paper directly, then lots of pressure. And make sure it's dry. Oh, look at that. So now we can print. This sort of looks cloud shapes, doesn't it? So let's make that up. And I'm just lining up with the top of the plate. And again, if you want to have another sheet on top, it's a good idea. Just a piece of copy paper will do. Now from here, all holes are, barred You can do what you want with the gel plate. You can add more marks, you can add color, you can do some sheen collé where you're adding bits and pieces that get printed onto your work. That's the joy of the... And look at that. Ooh. Isn't that delicious? How beautiful the marks are. Well, let's see if we can reprint. Actually, there's enough on there. We'll just move it over and print some more for ghost print. And then we'll re-ink that as if we were running, you know, an edition, and do it once more. I really think the extra heat helped. Now, for those of you in a warm climate, it's not a problem, and maybe it might go the other way. And the gel plate, you know, is just like an etching press, and look at that, even the second, almost exactly the same quality. Well, let's see. Yeah, let's run it on this side a little bit more. I had a page for that. I don't want my brayer all mucked up, and my baron, I mean. Now, this will require a little extra pressure. It's now a third passing. Yes, you can see the difference here between this mark and this one, or the first one, and this. No, this was the first one, this was the second one. And then you lose the crispness, but isn't that wonderful? Okay, let's go to this part with re-inking. Now, everything applies as before. You must wet your plate. Got a few wrinkles here. Just make sure your surface is wet, and let's see if we can, and our ink should be in good shape. Thinner is better. And it's working. So let's print this on paper as if it were an edition. Don't forget to keep it moisturized. And sometimes the second and third passes are even better. Let's try and get this line. All right, so let's print this on paper. In this case, you have to use a wooden spoon. And definitely to protect your paper, use another sheet. Okay, so nice tight little circles. At least we don't have to do it for the whole plate. But you see how much more labor intensive this is than doing it on the gel plate. It's perfect on the gel plate, and you're going to spend at least 3 to 4 minutes or more with a lot of arm strength to print this, unless you have an etching press. And I'm sure we've taken up a couple of minutes. And there we got everything. Oh, down here a little bit more. Now this piece, of course, you could collage into that one. Okay, let's just... So now let's look at the comparison. So these lines are good, but look at the delicacy and the sensitivity of these ones. And this was just the ghost print. So I think you actually get a better result with the gel plate. But it's not a bad print. And of course, we can continue with this. You just wet your plate again, and you re-ink. Just to demonstrate once more. Not too wet. And let's see if it takes it. Yes. So we could continue to run this, and that looks even better than the first time. Very nice. Look at the strength of that. Wow. Okay. So let this dry. I'm going to print it on here and print some more on our base, but we'll do that off camera because the next thing we want to do, we're going to try for the merganser. Well, are you wishing me good luck? Okay, here we are at drawing the merganser, and we're going to estimate the head here. And our head is 4 body width with a little bit extra. So if we do our head here, 1, 2, 3, 4, we should have plenty of room. Okay, so in that case, let's do the beak. And I don't want the beak too close to the edge because sometimes there's either grungies there or it just doesn't work. And he's got quite a long beak. And then again, we estimate the head. And hopefully, 2, 3, 4, I think so. And then it's got this very strange and he's got this shape and quite a thick neck, and we're going to do more of this shape because it's all hair, feathers.
The hair feathers.
Well, it looks hairy. Oh. Wasn't there a ducktail, sort of a fashion thing for a while there? Okay, and then this part of the beak, this part of the beak, and then he's got this strange sort of and then the eye fits in there, which is convenient. Okay, and then going down to the body. And then this long, long tail. Got quite a thin, long body. And then we're just going to sort of estimate the feet. They're sort of abstracted. Then basically it's just some simple details and 2 large shapes here. So always, if you are seeing shapes, always do the shapes. That always gives you the character. And I'm just following along. And there's a mid area here. Make sure your pin is working. And then there's sort of these rolling feather shapes. And you can sort of make them up. You'd study the bird and how it, but you know, this drawing is far more abstract. And just interesting lines. Make it graphic. Yeah, some fun with the drawing. Make it interesting. And you can give it some line work. There's some dark areas on the head here. You can let those straggle out a bit. As long as you have this shape, that's the main thing. And maybe some hatching, looking like feathers. Let's do the reflection here. And make it look watery. And then from there you can just do watermarks. Oh, we have all those little marks already in our... Just keep this part simple. And maybe do a little bit of hatching on here so that we get the feeling of a little bit of tone. I don't want to do too much because the ink might just glob on it. There's a little bit of tone down the back here. And hopefully that shows up. Just the feeling of featherishness and a few lines to show that it's water. So now to the Coke part. Make sure all the lines are... Okay, now a little bit of our oil, just to take off the image. Just a tiny bit more just to get any dark areas off. Okay, now the water part. I'll just put a little bit of water on there. And don't saturate it. So warm up your paint. Nice thin layer. And then just make sure you have that little film of water on there. And hopefully, oh yes. Just need to get that top yet. And our beak. Well, I could have put more detail in. And no grungy areas, well, one tiny one. Okay. You have no idea how relieved I am. I've had a lot of disasters, but when it works, it's great. It's just wonderful. So, okay, so now, again, we have to wait. We can maybe do a little cleanup here. And then the final is printing it on our piece with all the little squiggles and everything else we've done today. And which means that, you know, I will carry on in the future. And I guess I better get some more Betty Crocker aluminum foil. And works good. Yeah, be careful about the foil, you know. So much of it is coated now, and you'll have nothing but failures, and you're wondering why. And I think one of the big ones here was make sure your paint is rolled out properly. You know, spend your time to get it nice and thin. And we've got the heater behind us. My basement studio is quite cool for the most part. And then it makes your paint globby and stick the wrong way. So now we know. I wasn't sure exactly what was happening, why I was having failure after failure. But now we understand. So let's do a bit of cleanup and off camera, of course. That's one thing, it is a bit messy, but you know, your canola oil or whatever you're using works great. Just add a few drops on there, few paper towels, and you know, you've got it under control. The brayer, you can just do a lot of it on a roll-off sheet. And some of these sheets are quite interesting, so save them as well. For example, look at this. So get most of your paint off. Once you get most of the paint off, then you can just take some of the oil to it. And you can see that it's coming. It goes quite a long ways. So let those sheets oxidize. They don't dry like normal things. They just they need air to oxidize. and then you can use them. If you're combining them with acrylics, of course, it goes over acrylic but not under, so just to be aware. Okay, we're going to wait for this to dry, and then we'll print it on the gel plate and then print it onto our artwork, and boy, what a process. I'm glad you're joining me for this adventure. That's so great. And oh, thank you for all the lovely comments. I must say, I really enjoy hearing from you. Join me on YouTube, or sorry, Facebook, for my Shoreline Studio site. And, you know, give me some comments on there and maybe show me some of your artwork, and, you know, let's talk about things. Okay, be back in a second. So it's dry, and I'm just going to place a plate over top of this plate for a change. I can position it better because I can see the bird through it. Then we'll just flip her over, and then we apply pressure as much as we can. Now if it's not going to move, I'm going to step on it, give it some weight. Make sure everything is dry when you do that, otherwise it's going to slide on you, and then you'll have a disaster. Okay, we can flip it once more, and it should be good. All right, we can just peel the there we go. Wow, and we could probably print it 3 or 4 more times. And look at this. And of course, it's reversed, right? And guess what? When we print it, it's going to be the right way around. Let's see our paper again. And I think we decided the cloud things were at the top. And we're just going to line it up. And get a clean piece of paper here. A little bit of rubbing with the Baron. And if you were doing this with a wooden spoon, you would be doing it for quite a long time. And now we can peek. And are we getting our, oh yes, look at this. Wow. Awesome. And that's how you do it. And there you are. Now from here, of course, you know, you could add other media. I kind of like it as a drawing. And you could enhance the clouds. And I was thinking of maybe adding, you know, merganser under here. That would be nice. No problem, you know, as usual, we'll crop the edges. And, but, wow, what a fabulous result. Maybe all you watching were sending me good vibes, so this turned out, that's awesome. So, well, see us again for another adventure here at Shoreline Studio. It's been an absolute blast today, and thank you for hanging in right to the end. I really appreciate it, and don't forget to, you know, do the usual, to like and subscribe and share. And we love to do artwork. We're not sponsored by anybody, not that we wouldn't tackle it, but you know, we're doing it because we love to teach art. We love doing the tutorials, and you'll see us again shortly. Don't forget to be kind to yourself and to your family. and everybody else. Bye for now.